and welcome back to my channel, where I'm going to cover the monk's Way of the Astral Self class specialization from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, providing a brief description of the subclass, as well as explain and set up the various features gained. The monks of the Astral Self monastic tradition have taken an entirely different tack when it comes to realizing their chi. They believe their physical bodies are the manifestation of an illusion, while the astral body is their true form, and the form their physical body takes on is just how others perceive them. As a result of this, monks of this tradition can be found on both sides of the good versus evil tug of war that is typically found on any world your campaign might be set in. Monks are a class that will gain their class specialization at level 3. As such, I've covered everything up to level 2 in another video, and the other class specialization videos from the player's handbook cover a bit more detail on how to deal with the base class itself. As a result, I will be focusing entirely on the Way of the Astral Self class during this video. I'll be sure to provide a link to those videos in the description below. At this point, however, I want to look at leveling up this level 2 monk to level 3 so that we can choose the Way of the Astral Self. And the first feature your character will gain is called the Arms of the Astral Self, and this is where your character will be able to manifest a spectral set of arms that provide several benefits. This will be used as a bonus action, and it will cost you 1 key point. Anyone who is within 10 feet of your character will be required to make a dexterity-based saving throw or be dealt 2 rolls of your martial arts die and force damage. The extra set of arms will last for up to 10 minutes, and they can appear near your character's current arms, or you can choose to cover them up as if you have suddenly gained an astral overlay over your character's existing arms. This placement and appearance will be entirely up to you, but the appearance will have no other effect. However, as long as the effects of the arms are in place, your character will gain the following benefits. If your character is required to make a strength-based saving throw or skill check, you can choose to replace the strength stat with the wisdom modifier when attempting to make the roll. And for example, in relation to your skills, if all of a sudden you were asked to make an athletics-based skill check, which is a strength-based stat, you can choose to temporarily replace this with your wisdom, make your roll, and then put it back to strength once you're done. When it comes to the strength-based saving throw, instead of using this particular die here, you would instead use this one down here. So instead of rolling this dice, you would roll this one as a substitute for it. Now, in this case, it wouldn't have benefited me, but you do technically have a higher bonus here than if you had used your strength check. So in theory, it could pay off. Another benefit is that the arms can be used to execute unarmed attacks, and if you choose to do so, their reach will extend your character's current reach by 5 additional feet. For example, if your character currently has a reach of 5 feet, you will now be able to hit up to 10 feet out as long as you're using your spectral arms for that. The damage itself will also make use of the force damage type rather than the usual bludgeoning damage type if you choose to use no weapons during your attack. Finally, when you make the attack roll, your character can use the wisdom modifier in place of any strength or dexterity bonuses for the damage and the attack rolls. And before I move on to actually going through and setting this up, I want to point out that the rest of this information sheet here is there to guide you on creating the appearance of the astral self. So I highly recommend you read it over and see if there's a form you want to come up with for your character's astral projection of their chi. So let's first go through and deal with the first part of this particular feature, where as you manifest your arms, anyone within 10 feet of your character must succeed on their dexterity saving throw or suffer some damage. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this into place. We already have the dexterity-based saving throw here, although it may be set up incorrectly. I am also going to move this into the Way of the Astral Self power group. All right. So that sets that up. I also want to make sure that this power group makes use of wisdom, because that is the stat that is your primary stat for this particular character. Now you may be asking how I know that. Well, that was covered as part of the other videos that deal with the key feature itself, or the chi feature. Down here, you will see that your primary stat for all of your features is going to be your wisdom modifier. That means that wisdom is your primary stat for anything that you do that makes use of any of these features from either your base class or from the class specialization. And as we can see, after we're making the changes here, our dexterity-based saving throw requirement has now adjusted to use a 13 as opposed to an 8 for the actual roll. So if someone is required to make that saving throw, they now have to go and roll a value higher or equal to 13 in order for them to succeed. Now we still have to go through and apply the damage. So I'm going to create a brand new effect here, and it's just going to be a basic damage one. I'm going to add this, and at this level, our martial arts die is a 1d4. So I'm going to add 2 1d4 there. Now, do I need the modifier? Let's have a look. No, I do not. There is nothing here that states that we add any additional modifier to this particular damage in any way, shape, or form. So in relation to a combat-based scenario, as long as you have the action token and you choose to manifest the astral arms, then at the time that you do that, anyone within 10 feet of your character will have to make the saving throw or suffer damage. So let's say that the vampire, these 3 apes, and the mind flayer are all within the same reach. So I'm going to go ahead and target all of these. And you can see that they're all targeted here. Now I'm going to force them to make that saving throw. Fantasy Grounds is going to roll for you, automatically deselect who failed or succeeded, rather, that saving throw, so that when you roll the damage or apply the damage, it will only do damage to those who actually failed their saving throw. So the strength-based saving throw being swapped into a wisdom-based saving throw was something that's going to be handled on the DM if the effect is being triggered by a creature. They will have to modify what's called a save versus effect that would be associated with that particular creature to, instead of using strength, to use wisdom before they make the roll and then switch it back when they're done. But how do you deal with the use of the actual wisdom check versus strength check? I've already shown you how to do that using your skill modifier. You just simply adjust this to temporarily be wisdom for anything here that is a strength one, and I think athletics is the only one that's actually a strength one. So that when you actually make this check, you just swap it to wisdom, make your roll, and then swap it back. That's all you do. Now, to set up the attack using your spectral arms, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm simply going to modify this particular effect here to enable something here for the attack. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to a melee-based attack roll, and I'm going to leave everything else alone. The reason being is we've already set it up. The arms of the Astral Self are a feature. Therefore, when they make an attack as part of a overall melee-based roll, they're going to make use of your wisdom modifier as part of that attack roll. In addition, they are most likely going to make use of your wisdom modifier when you actually hit something. So that would be rolling damage. Well, we want to go through and add another damage type there. And blunt-based or unarmed strikes are a 1d4, but we also want to ensure that we add in the wisdom. So that will be the damage that your unarmed strike is going to do. And that is because this links directly towards your martial arts die. Not because generally an unarmed attack uses a 1d4. If this was a non-monk character, that would stay as a 1d4. But as your character levels up, I would argue your damage increase is going to also increase because of the fact that you're using your unarmed strike, which is utilizing your martial arts die. I also forgot to set the damage type for both of these to be force. And in relation to this 1d4 plus 3 for your wisdom modifier, you actually have a choice. It states it right here. So if you wanted to, you could actually set this up to make use of your dexterity bonus. So let's just scroll through. And in this particular character's case, it is actually an improvement. And it can be used for both your attack and your damage rolls. So I'm going to modify this to also make use of the dexterity bonus directly because it is a better attack roll. Makes sense. You get to choose that. And if at some point in the future you decide to make your wisdom score modifier here higher because you've now added your ability score improvement values to them, and let's say you take it right up to a 20, but you leave your dexterity at an 18, then it makes sense to switch it to wisdom in this case. So how would that work? Well, very simply, anytime you wish to execute an unarmed strike, you simply tell the DM, I'm going to be using my astral arms. My range is now 10 feet. All right, so let's say that this particular ape here, specifically ape 2, and I'm going to untarget 3 and 4, is 10 feet away, and that's the creature you want to attack. Well, what you would do then is just target them, go ahead and make your attack roll. In this case, it's a miss, but let's say it hits. Well, then you would roll your damage for this, and it would do the X amount of force damage to that particular creature. And this can be executed every single time you make an unarmed strike, as opposed to you using your own fists for this. You can choose to use your astral arms. And yes, that does include Flurry of Blows. Something to note on this particular feature is that you don't really have a way of tracking how long this particular effect is around. Well, what I would like to do is propose that we add another effect, and it's literally just going to be called Astral Self, or Arms of the Astral Self. It's not going to do anything. All it's going to do is tell you roughly how long this is going to be there. That way, when it's on your character, and it will only be on your character, as long as you're in the combat tracker, you will always see the effect there, and it will last for up to 100 rounds. Although if you've got a combat scenario that's lasting 100 rounds, how is all I'm going to ask. But anyway, this does give you the ability to now track whether you have that particular feature out there and ready to go. And that's going to come into play a little bit later on when we start looking at utilizing other features that your character is gaining as they level up. When your character reaches level 5, you'll want to modify both of these particular effects here to take into account that you now do a 1d6 point of damage, or in the case of this, 2d6, rather than the 2d4 and the 1d4. And that's because you have an increase in your martial arts die. So I'm going to go ahead and just simply delete that, drag, and add one more. And now all I'm doing is holding down the left mouse button and right-clicking once to do that. And then I'm going to modify this effect here, remove that, and drop a 1d6 into place. At Monk level 6, your character will gain access to the Visage of Astral Self, which can be activated as a bonus action or in combination with the Arms of Astral Self feature. It will cost your character 1 key point, and that is in addition to the key point spent for Arms of Astral Self in order to summon the Visage for a period of 10 minutes. And you'll notice that that 10 minutes comes around quite a bit. In this case, the Visage will cover your face as if you were masked or wearing a helmet, and much like the arms, you can choose the appearance that is displayed. As long as your character remains conscious or is not incapacitated, they will gain the following benefits. And if your character already has Arms of the Astral Self summoned, this will be in addition to those benefits. The first benefit is that your character will now be able to see in total darkness for a distance of up to 120 feet, and it will allow your character to even see through magically created darkness. This includes the darkness spell. Additionally, your character will also gain advantage on any insight and intimidation ability checks they are required to make. And the last benefit your character is going to gain with this feature is they will gain the ability to focus their speech on a single creature who is within 60 feet of your character's location, such that only they can hear your character speaking. Think of it as the equivalent of telepathy in the sense that you can communicate between two creatures, yourself and the creature you're looking at actually communicating with, and only that creature can hear you. And rather than restrict your character's speech to one individual, they can amplify their voice if they so choose, so that they can be heard by everyone within 600 feet of where your character currently stands. So you get two options when it comes to being able to modify your speech capability. So let's go ahead and add this to our Actions tab. So first thing I'm going to do is drag this into place. I'm going to copy this particular power group here and make sure that this feature gets moved down into that location. Now, as you can see, there are no effects here. So the first thing we are going to want to do is the same thing we did for Arms of Astral Self, is just create this effect to show that there is a duration on how long this particular feature is going to exist. I'm going to go and create a new effect. Just call this Visage of the Astral Arms, or Astral Self, I should say. Now, in this particular case, I'm going to do something slightly different. We also have a vision effect, if you will, that comes into play. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I actually add this as part of this effect, because it really doesn't make sense not to do it. I am, however, going to set up a duration, and this is going to be on your own character. Now, with D&D 5th edition, Dark Vision doesn't have the ability to see through magical effects, but there is another feature called Devil's Sight, and it actually matches the exact description of what we're seeing here. So instead of using Dark Vision for our Vision modifier, we're going to use Devil's Sight. In this particular case, we're going to put in Vision, 120 for the range, and then we're going to go Devil's Sight. And that goes through and takes care of both the duration that this particular feature is going to stick around for, as well as dealing with our vision related aspect of things. And this last part of it, Word of the Spirit, is literally just going to be a role-playing related effect, if you will. So you're going to tell the DM that you're going to want to talk to one specific creature or all creatures within 600 feet. So it's up to you which one you choose. Now, how do you go ahead and use these? Well, in a combat situation, I'm going to go ahead and set up the combat tracker here to be on our character here, or the token. I'm then going to apply both of these effects on our character, simply because they can both go on the minute you indicate that you're bringing up Way of the Astral Self. Now, technically, when you both use Arms of the Astral Self and Visage of the Astral Self, you'll want to make sure that you click a key point for both characters. And this character's level 6, so theoretically, I should actually have a total of 6 key points, just for completeness of that. Now, when I go ahead and look on a map, I'm not going to do that here in this particular case, but this should actually have a duration of 100. Why does that have a duration of 10? Oh, that's 10 rounds. That's why. Okay, there we go. Let's clear that effect and reapply it. Now, if I minimize that, good. Now they both have a duration of 100 rounds, if you will. But what you will see when your character is now on a map is it will override your character's natural dark vision capabilities, extend its range, and give you the ability to see through magical darkness effects of any kind. When it comes to the advantage rolls that we have here, both for insight and intimidation, if you go ahead and roll an intimidation-based skill check, you should see 2 die that are rolled there, and if we do the same thing for insight, we see 2 die are rolled there. Perfect. So, as long as those effects are in place, everything here should work as you expect it to. So at monk level 11, you're going to want to ensure that you modify your martial arts die once again. Just simply pop out this, delete that, grab 2d8, drop that into place, and then do the exact same thing for the other effect here. Except in this case, you only need 1d8. Also at monk level 11, your character will gain access to the Body of the Astral Self feature, which allows your character to bring forth the body of their astral visage, linking the visage of the astral self and the arms of the astral self into the body's form. This will cost no additional key points, nor will it cost any action, but your character must have both the arms and the visage summoned for this to work. And while this form is active, it will allow your character to reduce the amount of damage from any lightning, thunder, acid, cold, fire, or force damage types by reducing it through making use of a 1d10 plus your character's wisdom modifier, and that will be the total damage reduction. For instance, if your character has a +3 to their wisdom modifier and they roll a 4 on a 1d10, then they could reduce the amount of incoming damage by a total of 7 points. And additionally, when your character successfully hits with their astral arms, they will be able to make a 3rd martial arts damage die to the total damage of the attack, but this can only occur once per turn. So we're going to want to ensure that when we modify astral arms for that, we keep it separate. In fact, we'll probably throw it into Body of the Astral Self. Now I'm going to go ahead and drop this into our Actions tab and copy and paste our power group for easy typing. And I want to remind you that both Visage and Arms of the Astral Self have to be on your character at the same time in order for this to manifest. And that part of it is going to have to be essentially roleplayed. You'll just have to be cognizant that that is going to come into play. But what we do want to do is add a new effect. And this effect is going to be what's provided to an incoming attacker's own damage roll to reduce this type of damage. And of course, I'm literally saying this type of damage while I'm lifting my hand and pointing at the information sheet itself. So you can't see me doing that. But it's going to allow you to apply a damage reduction to the types of damage that I listed earlier. Now, we don't get to specify that damage type here, but what we can do is this. We're going to call it Body of the Astral Self, because that's going to tell the Dungeon Master where this effect is coming from. And what we're going to do is make this a damage modifier of minus 1d10 plus a minus, actually you don't even need a plus there, so, and then in square brackets, minus WIS. And what that should do is it should pull out our wisdom modifier as a negative value, add all of this together to get us our total amount of damage reduction, and then we can go through and roll that damage. Let's see if that actually works. So in a combat scenario, I've gone ahead and added an adult white dragon because it does cold damage, and that's going to show the reduction of the effects as we see it, or at least the damage that's going to get rolled. So the way this will work is as follows. The adult white dragon has the attack. They have the action token. That means they're going to be attacking our monk. I'm going to go ahead and target our monk. I'm then going to make my attack roll. And let's see, where's the... There it is. So I'm going to make a saving throw. Our character failed, which means they will be taking the total amount of 12d8 cold damage. It's going to kill this character because this character isn't high enough level yet to really have enough hit points to resist this all that well. But we could theoretically reduce this by applying this effect on that dragon. And this has to be done before the dragon rolls the damage. So we can see here that we have DMG minus 1d10 minus 3. Now, if I roll the damage effect, they survived. And you will see here that we have the 1d10 and the negative 3. So we rolled a minus 1 on the actual damage reduction. In addition to that, we had 4 additional points taken off. So let's do the math. So the total amount of damage dealt to us was 59 points of damage, minus the 4 points because we rolled a 1 on our damage reduction dice. In addition to the 3 gives us a subtraction value of 4, makes this total 55 points of damage. That's exactly what we want. So this means this is working the way that we want to. The only thing that didn't happen is it should have expired on that roll. So let's try that again. Now, before I do the actual attack damage, I should say, I'm going to heal our character. There we go. So now I'm going to take that cold spell again and re-roll the damage with the effect in place. So let me reapply that. Oop, wrong one. There we go. And let's make the attack roll here. Okay, so we see that we have a slightly higher reduction on the point value, but more damage overall done to our character. We still survived. Barely, we still survived. Now, there's one adjustment I want to make to this effect, and that's to add in all of these particular damage types here. I don't think it's going to do anything, but I'd rather have it there and not have it do something than not have it there and unintentionally bypass damage or reduce the amount of incoming damage if it wasn't the right type. There. So I don't know if that will work. Let me give that a try quickly here. So I'm going to drop that effect into place again. Oops, wrong one. There we go. Heal our character again, and then roll the damage again. So yeah, I just used one of the other ones, and it still seems to work. So having that there doesn't appear to be an issue, but hopefully it will restrict the reduction to these kinds of damage. And now I want to add the effect to the empowered arms part. So I'm going to go ahead and add another effect here. And this is going to be Body of the Astral Self. And what it's going to do is add an additional martial arts die, which at this particular point in time is 1d8. And it doesn't look like it adds any additional modified damage, meaning it will not make use of your wisdom modifier or anything like that. So that's all it is. It's going to also be force damage. It's going to be on yourself, and it's going to expire on your next roll. So how this will work is actually fairly straightforward. Let me set up our monk with the token. So let's say you chose to use the attacks for the astral arms. I do believe that is the restriction. Yes, so when you're making use of anything that hits anything using Astral Self, sorry, the arms of the Astral Self, then what'll happen here, let's say it's this one here. I'm going to force Ape 2 to make a saving throw. They failed, so now I have to go through and add the effect for this particular damage amount here, and then I'm going to roll the damage. But that's the only time that you can do it. Next round, you can do it again. So let's say you've now got your arms up. You're about to attack, say, Ape 3, because Ape 2 is now unconscious, and you make use of the martial arts die when it comes to actually making an unarmed strike. So I'm going to go ahead and make my attack roll. Oops. Is that a double click or a one click? So you don't double click, you just one click here. Oop, that's a critical hit. That's going to hurt. You then apply the damage again, and you roll once to apply the actual total damage. Oh, now he's dead. Now, if you make your second... Oops, I don't want to target myself. If you make your second attack utilizing your arms as part of Flurry of Blows, you would only roll this once. You wouldn't roll with this particular part added. At Monk level 17, you're going to want to modify anything that makes use of your martial arts die and change the damage types to 1d10s as opposed to 1d8s. So anything that does 2d8 points of damage will now be 2d10. Anything that does 1d10 points of damage will now be 1d8 points of damage will now be a 1d10. And that includes the body of the Astral Self adjustment that we had earlier here. So that's now 1d10. Everything else stays as it is. And finally, at Monk level 17, your character will have awakened their Astral Self as fully as possible and thus be granted the feature called Awakened Astral Self. As a bonus action, your character can choose to spend 5 key points and awaken the arms, visage, and the body of the Astral Self in a single summoning, and ensure all parts of the Astral Self remain for the 10-minute duration from that particular point in time. While your character is using the fully awakened Astral Self, they will gain the following benefits. The first is that your character will now gain a +2 to their armor class, and this will last as long as the character remains conscious and is not incapacitated, nor the duration of Astral Self has not expired. The second bonus is that if your character uses their astral arms to attack while using the extra attack feature, they will be able to attack a total of 3 times rather than the usual 2, meaning that they will gain a third attack. And these benefits are in addition to all of the other benefits that Arms of the Astral Self, Body of the Astral Self, and Visage of the Astral Self give your character when they're summoned. So let's go ahead and add this to our actions sheet. Okay, copy and paste that. And what I want to do is deal with this part first. So the armor of the spirit, if you will. I'm going to create an effect here. And I know I could have actually individually classified these as arms of the spirit, for example, or in this case, armor of the spirit. I could have called it this rather than just body of the astral self. It doesn't really much matter. It's up to you. What we're going to gain is an AC:2. And it's going to last for the duration. And it's going to be on your own character. Now, there is a way we could theoretically restrict this armor class bonus to come into play only when we have Arms of the Astral Self there, because technically Arms of the Astral Self, Body of the Astral Self, and Visage of the Astral Self, they don't necessarily need to be there, but they are awakened when you go through and create this particular effect of the feature. So I don't think it's required in this particular case where we have an if check here to make sure that Arms of the Astral Self is actually in effect on your character before it applies this AC bonus increase, but it's an option. If your DM wants you to do that, then refer to a couple of the other videos where I set up a marker and then actually do an if test, if you will, on making sure that that particular marker is there or not. But I would argue it isn't required, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Now, when it comes to Astral Barrage, all you really have to remember when you're making an extra attack is that instead of just attacking twice, you can attack 3 times as opposed to your double attack. So, how does Armor of the Spirit work? Well, as soon as you activate this particular feature, you're going to want to add this effect to your character, and that's in addition to all of the other effects that you need to add to your character. That way, when you're attacked, and let's say the adult dragon here is going to do an attack roll, what we should see is that there is a defense effect in play here. And that means that the AC2 bonus is working. Did I set a duration on that? Yes, I did. So there is a 10-minute duration there. So if I close that, you'll see that it'll be around for 100 rounds. But as a complete explanation of how this effect comes into play, it's going to be as follows. I'm going to pop open the combat tracker again. I'm going to clear out all the effects to prepare for this. When your character makes the decision to execute Awakened Astral Self, here's what you're going to do. You're going to burn 5 key points. As soon as you do that, you're going to apply this effect to your character. You're going to apply Armor of the Spirit effect to your character. You're going to apply both. Actually, no, not that one. This one. We just want that one effect there. Although technically that doesn't necessarily need to be there right now. It can be there when you do your actual attack roll. But these 2 effects will need to be applied to your character. So this is what your combat sheet will look like after you actually have gone through and executed Awaken Astral Self. That's because every single one of these effects come into play. That's the reason why you're burning 5 key points, because you're literally bringing your entire armor suit, if you will, to play at the same time, as opposed to activating it one round and then getting to the next round and bringing it all forward again on another round and then bringing it all forward again on the third round before everything's there. With this particular effect, everything just pops into place just like that. And when it comes to the extra attack, when you go through and say, make your attack against the dragon, so I'm going to just simply go ahead and do that. Now, your character does gain the extra attack feature. So that means that you could theoretically, after I think it's level 5, attack twice. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to get rid of 8-4 from my targeting list. I'm going to go ahead and make my unarmed strike. Now, technically, your monk weapon is classified as an unarmed strike. So that means you could execute this. Ooh, that's a nice bonus. Add in that extra damage that I did, because maybe I used the arms. And I forgot to mention, anything within 10 feet, when you actually execute Awakened Astral Self, also suffers the damage from that force damage. And unfortunately, the critical roll doesn't come into play there, but it should have been cast at the time that the whole suit came into play. So anything within 10 feet should have taken that damage. Now, back to my roll here. I've already attacked. I've hit. I can now do this damage plus the extra damage that I would have done here. I get to attack again because I have my extra attack. I missed on my extra attack. I get to attack a third time. And that's going to be a critical fail. But because I hit, I can now execute Flurry of Blows, which now gives me 2 extra unarmed attacks. So I can go ahead and do that. That's a hit. Again, I only get to roll this once, simply because, or I could have rolled this. It doesn't really much matter. Maybe I'm using my arms for all of these attacks, because these are all unarmed strikes. And technically, I could be using this attack roll here. And then I will get my second attack as part of Flurry of Blows. And that was a miss, but let's say I rolled the additional damage. Now I am done. That's how many attacks your character can make when they incorporate their extra attack on top of Flurry of Blows. So you now have a total of essentially 5 attacks that you can make. And as there is nothing else that we have to deal with in relation to this class, it sort of brings us to the conclusion. And the monks of this subclass are a take on a concept of utilizing their chi and turning it into a projection that they can embody force and make use of that force for defensive and offensive options. But it is definitely an interesting take on being able to project your chi into an externally identifiable force that changes what your character can be viewed as, specifically as their astral projection, as well as the amounts of damage they can deal or absorb because of that power. However, this does bring us to the end of this particular video. I hope you found it useful and informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comment section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.